Hi everybody, and welcome to finally another tutorial. This time we're going to be going through how to play Pure Snows from the Kanon and Air Refeel Arranged album. And I have to apologize to Piano Gamer 01 and Ashura Lotus because both of them asked for this. Piano Gamer asked for this a long time ago, and Ashura Lotus asked for it earlier this year, a few months ago. And I figured it's more than overdue that I finally get around to this. So the wait is finally over. Let's get into it. So for the first part of the song, I'm actually just going to go right into playing both hands together because I find that it doesn't make nearly as much sense playing one hand out of context of the other here. So I'm going to play the whole thing first, and then I'll go through some details. So let me explain each part of that in a little more detail. So the first two measures are really simple because it's just a single note in the left hand each time, and it's just kind of introducing the whole theme. And the third and fourth measures after that basically just add two notes to that. What we're going to end up doing is the same thing, but we're going to add a couple of notes kind of echoing the end of the previous phrase. So we're going to have that the first time and that the second time. So we have. So that's your third and fourth measures. Now, the fifth and sixth are when things really start scaling up, and then it just repeats. So you're going to see me crossing over immediately. So we start with a doubled octave in the left hand. And then we immediately go up here. And then we cross over to hit the F sharp octave with our right hand and also get our left hand ready for the next thing. And that repeats again. So you might think that's a lot of motion going on. Why can we do like both hands at the same time or something? You could theoretically, because you could do like, let's see, how would that work? Nope, I just screwed it up. So you could do that. I find that more difficult to wrangle because that involves very fast, precise motion in both hands at the same time. And also, think about this for a second. In the previous measures, your right hand was already getting used to doing this chord. That was what I just screwed up when I tried doing it up, moving both hands at once. By switching over one hand at a time, the right hand can still do exactly the same thing that it did in the first four measures. And then cross over. To me, it's easier to follow one hand at a time. It's up to you. You can try both, see what works for you, but that's what I find easier. So for the first verse, I'll do these separately because it's easy enough to isolate these. So here's the right hand first. So there's only a couple of things really worth noting there. For one, you want to make sure that you're using your pointer finger. At the very beginning, you want to use your pointer finger for the E and your middle finger for the F sharp. And what that does is it puts you in appropriate position to do that. because you'll have your your ring finger and pinky finger left over to do the G sharp and the A. Now, for that part, there's a couple of ways you can finger it. I goofed it a little bit there. I find it easier to put my thumb down on the E so that I can cross over and have all my fingers available to do the rest of that. Now, on the second repetition, you're going to have to move your hand this time. Because, whereas last time the A was the highest thing you need to hit, but now you need 3 fingers. And the only other little nitty-gritty detail to remember is when you do the major third on E and G sharp, you want to kind of arpeggiate that. So, like, you can see I'm putting a slight delay there, and then I'm hitting those at the same time. So just pay a little close attention to that if you want to emulate the original song. So for the left hand of the first verse, to start off with, we have this. And you repeat that 3 times, actually. So if that's 2 measures, you've got 8 measures total in the verse. And you're going to repeat this for basically the first 3 quarters of it. And then the fourth part of it sounds like. So if we put both of this together, here's what it ends up looking and sounding like. So for the first chorus, or at least that's what I'm calling it, it's probably going to be easier for me to show this off with both hands at the same time, which there's going to be a lot to digest here. But the reason I say that is because the right hand kind of switches between doing its own thing and also helping out the left hand. So I will try to kind of step through this bit by bit and explain what's going on. Because there is kind of a lot, and there's some stuff that's easy to like kind of get confused if you don't sort of like straighten it out in your head exactly what's going on in which measure. So first of all, just to have a point of reference, this is where your fingers are prior to this section starting. Now, you're probably going to have the sustain pedal held down at this point, so you can jump your left hand to have the pinky on the low D. But you're going to lead in with an E into an inverted F major, which is basically with the combination of the D and the left hand is going to end up making a D minor 7. Now, that thing that I just did with my right hand there is kind of artistic license, but what I try to do is just sort of evenly space out the notes with maybe a little bit of acceleration towards the middle. So let's do that again. Now we're going to leave our right hand where it is, but we're going to jump back down, so you're probably going to want to look at your left hand to hit this bottom D again. And you're going to want your right hand to just slide down to the E, so that your middle finger's on the E here. And now you're going to want to look at your right hand, because you need to jump so that your thumb is on this D here. So, let's do that again. We're going to be around here. So that's the first half of it. So going into this second half, one thing to take note of is what we're going to be doing slightly differently in the left hand now, because we're actually going to have doubled octave in the left hand, and then we're going to go up here straight to the F, and then back down to the D. And we're going to do that both times that we do a D minor 7th in the second half. So you can see that that did the same thing. You'll also notice that on the 7th measure, we didn't go back down to the D. So in the 5th measure, we had... You'll notice that we returned to the D at the end there, whereas in the 7th measure it's... And you don't return to the D in the 7th measure. Now going into the last part of it, there's kind of a lot to process here. I'm going to do this one hand at a time. So this is going to be based on E again. So we're basically, this entire course is just mostly switching between D minor 7 and E minor 7. But for the last one, we're going to have a lot of stuff going on in both hands, so this is going to probably take a while for you to get it all down, which is fine. Just practice each hand individually, and then start to put them together. But I'm going to do just the right hand first, and then the left hand. So that's the right hand, and here's the left. The left is really kind of almost an arpeggiation. It's just strictly going upwards for the most part. So that left hand probably looked really simple, right? But when you put it all together, it gets a little bit tricky to kind of coordinate both at the same time. So if we put all that together, this is what we end up with. Okay, so moving on into the second intro, before the second verse. This one is actually a lot more straightforward because it doesn't evolve or change at all. It's just the same thing over and over. So here's what it looks like. And that's the whole thing. The one thing that I'll note is that after the first measure, the F sharps up here are fairly strong, whereas after the second and third repetition, they're kind of more gentle. If you listen closely to the original, you'll pick that up. But yeah, that's the whole second intro. So for the second verse, I will show each hand in isolation again. So here's what the right hand looks like. So again, just to point out some fingerings real quick, we start off using the pointer and middle finger here, again, so that we can do all of that without having to move our hand at all. After that, we actually do have to move our hand and jump to here because of that B that gets thrown in there. And then in the next part, We start here so that we can keep that our hand is already in the right position, because the next measure is going to do and throw in the B there, and our thumb's already there and available to do that. Then we'll have to jump a bit. And then there's a bit of a lead-in with the C sharp here. And then again with the E. Like with the first verse. So here's the left hand of the second verse. So that's the first half, and you'll notice that what happens there is you have you'll have that full chord, and then you'll have the bottom note of it, and then the top two notes of it repeated. Now the second half is very similar, except that it doubles the bottom note, so it becomes an octave. And then for the final measure, we go into the same kind of phrase as the first time. And I just threw in the right hand there because, well, the right hand comes down for this chord here. And then we have, just as we had an E leading into the chorus before, we have a doubled E over an octave here leading into it this time. So we'll get into that next chorus next, which I'm sure is the part that everybody's been looking forward to. Alright, now for the thing that everybody is probably anticipating all along, which is the second chorus, where things get really interesting. It's kind of hard to fully separate these to show them both separately, but I am going to show the right hand first, and I'm going to play it with a metronome so that you can see where the notes line up with where you are in each measure. Alright, now I'm actually going to skip straight into putting both hands together because, in my opinion, it's really hard to actually just isolate the left hand. To me, I kind of make sense of it based on the context of what the right hand is doing. So I'm going to show them both together, but you've already seen the right hand, so kind of pay attention to what the left hand is doing and how it sort of syncopates with what the right hand is doing. And just kind of like pay attention to, well, the notes and the fingerings as you will see them. And, of course, feel free to use YouTube's slow down option to go to like half speed or whatnot if you want to take a closer look at things. I will explain some of the intricacies afterwards. So there's three things that I want to call out specifically in that chorus, either in terms of how the rhythms interact with each other in each hand, or in how the hands nearly overlap each other. The first is the first time that we see the E chord. Just to get that rhythm right, especially the delay before you come back down to the A. Just kind of get that worked into your head. It's definitely a little bit confusing at first until you kind of work that out. So the second thing that I want to call out is, again, on one of the E chord measures, but this is in the second half of the chorus. So the thing I want to point out is right here. The D is actually being played by the right hand because it overlaps with what the right hand is doing. That D right there. So I was kind of pausing there just to accentuate that, but I wanted to point that out because it is still, it's that chord both times, but the second time the left hand is only playing 2 of the notes, so that it's giving the right hand room to do its little phrase there. And the last thing I want to call out is again on an E chord, on the very last one in the chorus. What I wanted to basically call out is, notice how these effectively combine to make a G major chord in both hands. But they leave each other room. They don't actually like get in each other's way. Because the right hand is only playing the G. Just keep that one in mind because we will again be revisiting this in the last chorus. Alright, into the third verse, which is quite a bit different than the first two, but still has the same general idea and structure about it. I will again do these one hand at a time. So here's the right hand. And here's the left hand, which is actually really simple until right near the very end. And then I will throw in the right hand that leads into the last chorus. And here's what they look like together. So, now for the final chorus. Here's the good news. You already know 90% of this, because it is almost exactly like the second chorus. There are just a couple of key differences that I'm going to go over. The first one is, so remember when I went over the second chorus, I said to pay attention to a couple things because we'd be revisiting them? Well, now's the time to revisit them. So the first thing to revisit is, that's how it sounds in the second chorus. Here's how it sounds in the third. Notice how that note comes back sooner. It's actually more of a steady cadence in the third chorus. So that's your first difference. The other differences are right at the end of the chorus. So in the previous chorus you had that before, and I said to pay attention to that. In this chorus, instead of going to the G chord there, you're going to go to an E chord. And you're going to hit all of these notes in the right hand. And then right here, you're going to add that. Those are the only differences from the second chorus to the third chorus. So you already know most of it if you managed to truck on through the second chorus. Congratulations. So, the final outro is a lot like the intros we've already seen, sort of in reverse. So you're gonna want the hardest part of the outro is actually the very beginning of it, because you remember the end of the first intro where it goes. You're gonna need to do that immediately. So you're gonna need to get your hands in position and then immediately be prepared to jump. Then from there it devolves into which is a little bit like one of the phrases at the beginning of the song, except that it's still got the doubled octave. Then it comes further down into and then we take out the doubled note in the left hand. And that's how it ends, where you cross over one last time to hit those three notes. And at that point, you know the whole thing. So let me just go over that one more time in its entirety, the last section there. And one thing to point out there is just that I'm kind of like gradually slowing down. If you listen to the original song, you'll hear this too. Just kind of gradually adding more and more pause between each phrase there at the end. But that's it. We have gone through the entirety of Pure Snows. Hopefully better late than never. Hope this benefits those who were curious to try and learn this for themselves. So, hope you enjoy, good luck, and have fun. And hopefully see you again soon.